Hi, my name is Park. I work for Korea Telecom. Today it's June 1st, 2022. It's our national local election day. So I finished my voting earlier and in Gwangju City, and I drove to Taegu City for 2.5 hours, and then I took care of my customers' business. And since it was done, I just came to this interesting shrine for Chinese general who visited Korea, who came to Korea as part of the huge Ming Dynasty army. There was augmentation troops to Korea's then Joseon Dynasty's army and navy, who were fighting against the marauding Japanese army, army from Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the emperor of Japan at the time. The war lasted 11 or plus years, and this shrine, is hosting a famous, not so much famous, but well-known general, Ming general called Dusa충, in Chinese, Dusa충. I think I'm learning Chinese, but my Chinese is not that good. This is my second visit to this shrine, and I have been always curious about this general and General Yi Sun-shin, the famous Navy admiral who fought 23 battles and won all of the 23 battles and ended the war or invasion from Japanese army. So we are going to check out the Mr. Du, General Du's tomb and the shrine that was built by his descendants. He's a Chinese general, but he refused to go back after the war, and instead he decided to stay at that place. Even though he had his wife and several sons back in China, maybe back in Beijing, he refused, and instead he chose this place to settle in. And later he married a Korean wife and sired a lot of his descendants here. So he's considered the father of Korean Du family. So I think I have been curious about why he chose to stay behind and not go back to China, Ming Dynasty. It amazes me. So let's find out why, if there was any reason, and check out his tombs. Here we go. Let's go. So I was a soldier here in Taegu City from 1988 to 1990. I was the Korean augmentation troop to the U.S. Army, or Katusa soldier. Basically, we Katusa soldiers were U.S. Army soldiers. We wear the same uniform, same unit insignia, with a different rank system. Since we belong to the Korean Army, we use the Korean ranking system, but we wore the same uniform. We work together, we train together, we live together in the same barracks. Basically, we are the U.S. soldiers. I am not proud of being part of the U.S. soldiers, but I am proud of being having been the Katusa soldier, because I had a huge experience working with the U.S. Army. So that's where I picked up my English. I have several U.S. soldier friends, Sergeant Ramos and so on. So even though I'm still learning Chinese, means 熟人 Hing Hai Che Shi Ji Mo. So I guess this is the someone's wife's, maybe the General Mo's wife, Korean wife, or the daughter-in-law, maybe the son's wife. So here we have, I think these are sheeps, okay, and these statues depict the secretariat or minister. They are not holding a sword, but instead they are holding some kind of some note. So they belong to the literature family. They belong to the ruling class, not of general, but of the literature and literacy, some kind of, you know, scholar. Mr. Du was a general, but Mr. Du was also the feng shui expert. So he was the general of the frontier army of the Ming Dynasty. When the Ming Dynasty's army was helping us fight Japanese army, it's like a sentry force. They were like an outpost reconnaissance detachment. So he always goes to the place before the majority of his army arrives and decides where to encamp or where to stay, or where to build the fortress, using his feng shui knowledge and the military strategies. So he was the frontline reconnaissance detach. I guess that's Mr. Du's tomb, maybe, or maybe that one. I'm not sure. We will go and check out. I think the tomb is a bit small. Usually there are two tombs, maybe a general and wife, and this one someone's tomb. Usually that one is on the top ladder of the hierarchy than this one. So I guess that should be the general's tomb. If it isn't, maybe there was some story about why. Maybe this tomb is some other family's tomb. So he says, 车杀, okay. 确实屠夫屠人屠孔于中人寂寞屠汉杀 屠人屠公为冲离席 두사충. Maybe this is the 두사충's tomb. It's hard to say. 车杀, maybe someone else. Maybe his son-in-law. I mean his son or grandson. 두릉. So a different name, not 두사충. So we'll go down and check out his tombstone, kind of. In Korea, that's the flat stone bed is the tombstone slash the food offering table. So like a podium. It's more like a table for offering your food. 학생 두릉 두공. Okay. 두공 유갑. Okay, so this is two 유갑. Maybe that one was the 두사충's tomb. As you can see, the tomb is in a miserable state. Maybe a two family in Korea needs to do better job, or maybe that one is the 두사충. Let's check out the Chinese letters. In Korea, wife, when the wife dies later, they bury the wife at a different place. Then after like 10 years, they remove in turn the tomb, and they put the couple together in the same place. So I guess maybe this one has 두사충's body, skeleton, and also his wife's skeleton. So here says 정통混大夫九草各두공지모. 통지훈大夫 means 大夫, minister, maybe 大夫. 규장각, that's the the scholarly institute for the king. So they are like a research center for the king at the time. They researched the Korean language, Hangul, and all the politics, all the ruling systems and so on. 즉 각 두공지명. So maybe 공위한 궁풀. I don't know. It's quite confusing, but the one thing is sure: the tomb is in the deteriorate state. Either government, local government, or the Du family needs to mend the place and maybe elect some better stele. This is called stele. Now that's Mr. Chess. So different family just built the tomb there. So that's terrible. Now let's go to the shrine and check out what it is all about. There gotta be some story. Oh, okay, that's the okay. So we have 두사충's tomb of 두사충. 杜叔清吉摩명재。 Okay, so we'll visit his tomb and pay homage, because he helped Joseon Dynasty regain power and remain as the whole country that kowtowed to China. Unfortunately, you had to, because in old days, when you are just sandwiched between the superpowers, or when the superpower is just next door in your neighborhood, you need to pay homage, pay tributaries. What you call tributaries? You need to pay gems, women, and all sorts of other things. So that's the tomb of 두사충, Mr. Du, or General Du, who came to Korea in the later part of 16th century, or like 1589, 1590. He was the general. So that's tomb. We have a huge stele there with all the Chinese letters. It says Ming Dynasty Emperor 조한 지시 투공 충도 비명. So it's the what do you call man, I'm losing a lot of vocabulary. This is stele, and this is a tombstone statement. What do you call the tombstone statement? Man, I forgot the expression. So 모명선생 두공지묘. So 모명 is the another alias for Mr. 두사충. Eulogy? Wait a minute, eulogy is different. Man, what is it called? The statement you put on the stele, on the tombstone. What is it? Please, some reply underneath. That's general's tomb. It shows this owner, the dead person right there was the general or some soldier, because the statue is holding a knife. When the dead person was a scholar or not of the military class, then they usually hold some book or some other nomenclature wearing different costumes. So we have sheep, we have two eunuchs. Yeah, their balls are gone, so they are called eunuchs. What you call spade? They are spade. So I'll just pay homage. Thanks, Mr. Du, for keeping the Joseon dynasty from the marauding Japanese army right there. And you chose to stay in Korea instead of going back to your wife and the sons. What was the reason? Were you just fed up with the woman just constantly talking, teaching you, or trying to educate you on various things suddenly, or you're just fed up with your wife and instead wanted a new, beautiful, young Korean wife? What was the reason? So we'll just go to your shrine that was raised or constructed by your descendants. Bye-bye, General Du. So the statement or description on a tombstone is called epitaph. Man, that's easy word, but it was on the tip of my tongue and just slipped out of my mind. I'm 54 years old, so maybe I'm in the dotage, who knows. So now we came down to the shrine area. When I visited this area like 5 years ago, there was no statue like this. We have a small park right here at the time now. So here it says a small statue. It says Dusa충, General Du, and General Lee Sun-shin, the famed Korean admiral that was the crux of the war between Korea and Japan. They were very close friends to each other. They communicated with each other via mail. No emails at the time, but mail. And they sometimes sit down together and drank together, like drink. They drank tea and liquor, maybe. They were very close. They joked about each other, and I don't know, they just struck a chord and became friendlier each time they communicate. So Mr. Du and Mr. E, they were drinking tea at the time, out on the liquor, and discussing the politics and so on. We have a lamp, stone lamp. We have a small park, and that's the research center or the cultural heritage center for this Mr. Du's shrine area. It says experiential or experience hall. I don't know what kind of experience they offer. I'm clueless, and I think that's a waste of money. And we will just visit this shrine. It was built by Mr. Du's descendants. Du is one of the big family names in China. So I will just zoom in and read English. momyeongjae is a shrine for General Dusa충 of the Ming Dynasty, who came to Joseon Dynasty to support the Joseon army during the Japanese invasion of 1992, and later became naturalized in Joseon. He just remained behind and chose Taegu because Taegu was, he said, according to his statement, Taegu seems to be the holistic place in Korea, the Korean peninsula. As a matter of fact, it's almost in the center of South Korea, and this area exudes a lot of good Ki energy or Chi energy. So this place is auspicious place. When Gyeongsan Guest House was demolished in 1912, the descendants of General Du bought the timbers of the guest house and constructed momyeongjae shrine. Momyeongjae shrine. Momyeong is the alias of General Du. And the shrine was restored in February 1966. This building with double-layered eaves and hipped and gabled roof, measuring 4 small sections, 4 small walls, kind of compartments. The unit of distance between 2 columns. Oh, here you go. On the front and 2 the unit of distance between 2 columns, or the compartment, on the side was built on a square side facing south. There are 2 rooms with under a Chinese poem composed by, I would never forget my root. Chinese poem composed by General Yi Sun-shin was inscribed on the pillars of Daechang. And also there are some stone statues in the vicinity of the shrine, including a memorial stone with the inscription written by Yi In-su, I don't know, the 7th descendant of Admiral Yi. And the 2 statues with the literary figures made of blue stone from the Ming Dynasty. The tomb of Dusa충 is located on the foot of Heungjae Peak behind the shrine. That's where we visited before. For the Korean public, Korean audience, here's the statement in Korean. And here's a Japanese description. You were the guilty person. You invaded our country, but that's your ancestors. So let's bury the hatchet and let's enjoy the shrine and pay homage together. Okay, Mandongmun means Mandong, 10,000, Dong east. Moon means portal, door. So Mandong means, I don't know, large east maybe. Momyeongjae. Mo means love, earning for Ming Dynasty shrine or Ming Dynasty house. So Dusa충, even though he remained behind in Korea, he just earned for Ming Dynasty. He wanted to go back, but he couldn't. His wife will just kill him, chew him out. And so 봉성두한제 충무공 이순신 증시. Okay, so that's General Yi Sun-shin's poem for Mr. Du. And 숭정 귀루, some kind of outpost. 북치 동감고, I don't know what that is.北치 동티안쿠. Even though I just can understand several. Heungbongjae. Okay, that's the mountain behind this shrine. So this place is also called Heungbongjae and momyeongjae, earning for Ming Dynasty. 동래 홍사생,东来行四雄. I'll just read in Chinese. 二路很个人生事。金模当. So this means respecting and earning room for females, maybe his wife. So obviously, as we can see, he's earning for going back to Ming Dynasty. China was huge. It's just steeped everywhere in his shrine. Maybe he just cried when he couldn't go back. You know, once you just stay in Korea, you cannot go back to China because of your wife, or your emperor will kill you because obviously you betrayed, his rulership, his emperorship maybe. So this one is just, this still is for noting some contribution of someone. 인상 80 두릉 두공. 두릉 probably tung. 두공 means Mr. Du, or respectful Du. 병선 공덕비, I don't know what that is. Just is praise. Still, description of Mr. Du's activity at the time, maybe. We have a plum apricot tree there. Oh, sorry, it's a quince, Korean quince tree. We will just take a look into this one. Okay, both in Korean and Chinese. It says, friendship with General Lee Sun-shin. Japan invaded Korea again in 1597, so it is called Re-War in Korean. Dusa충, General Du, came to Korea, came to Joseon Dynasty at the time with the top general Jinnin, famous one. But Jinnin was his sister's husband. Okay, so obviously he had a huge tie with the General Jin. Probably Dusa충 was quite powerful too. His quite special friend was General Yi. Okay, and they had a good liquor together. And Yi Sun-shin died at the age of 53. Too young. I am 54. So maybe I was the General Lee and reincarnated into current me. Since General Yi was a top general of the Korean army at the time, Dusa충 naturally met Yi Sun-shin and they fell in friendship right there. And this is the poem that was sent by General Lee. 风筝朱为雅，北去东天哭，生南夜月。예예. terrible poem. 두보약에 드리는 시, 북으로 가면 고락을 같이 하고. Oh, here's another one, another phrase, another stanza. So we have 4 stanzas. Okay. 东来흥四성, 동으로 오면 죽고 사는 것을 함께하네. 生南예 야위에, 성 남쪽 타양의 밝은 달 아래. 今日 이바이징, 오늘 한 잔 술로서 정을 나누세. Okay, so it's 4 stanzas, very terse, very short, but it contains a lot of meanings, statements, and intentions and emotions. So obviously this poem shows how close they were. They were very close to each other. So it's all about the French statement. This one is for Chinese audience. I hope you can make out the description right there. So here describes how he just stayed behind in Korea. In 1959, when the General Lee died during the 7-year war at the sea, Japan just pulled back to their country, and but Dusa충 obviously understood or felt the Ming Dynasty is on decline and Qing Dynasty is on the incline, they were up and running. So he thought Ming Dynasty is goner, and he refused to go back because Ming Dynasty will be wiped out soon, and would be replaced by Qing Dynasty. So he said, I cannot be a Qing dynasty servant, and he stayed behind. So that's why he was very loyal to Ming dynasty. And he says, I don't want to be a servant for marauding, uneducated Qing dynasty, even though I have to be a Joseon dynasty person. So obviously he despised the Joseon dynasty too. So he just naturalized, stayed behind in Korea and got naturalized. And he chose Taegu as his home, new home. And the people were curious, why Taegu, not Seoul? So the Joseon dynasty treated him very well, respectively, and he just the government allowed him to stay wherever he wanted. So he says he was the expert on feng shui, and he knew every details of the Korean peninsula, and the government understood Taegu has some special meaning to him. First, he chose to stay Gyeongsang Gamyeong 공원자리. Gyeongsang Gamyeong means the Gyeongsang governor's place, and now it's the downtown Taegu. And he just said that's the good auspicious place, and he stayed there. Now it's became downtown. It's quite expensive real estate place. So he says his prediction was correct. And that place, his settlement was chosen to become the governor's new place. He just got compensated a lot, and he just gave up the land and moved to this place. And he came to this place and planted mulberry trees everywhere. He just encouraged Korean local people to plant and grow mulberries. So that's where he was. So he just refused to go back to Ming Dynasty or the current China, not because he was afraid of his wives chastising him on every matters, but rather he just refused to become the invading the Qing Dynasty, the northern China, or more like the Mongolian people, and he just despised them for their culture, uneducation, and the heritage. Instead, he chose to remain in Joseon. It was a huge decision for him, so I respect him on his decision, not because of his smartness. It must have been quite a difficult decision for him. So that's it. I just wanted to visit this shrine, and I had several hours to spare I have several hours to spare in Taegu. So now I will just move to Daemyeong-dong, where maybe he was settled there on the second place, and he named the place Daemyeong-dong. Daemyeong-dong is where the U.S. Army was stationed there. My unit was 516th Personnel Service Company. Now it is 516th